am going to call the meeting of the Animal Services Advisory Committee to order. The advisory committee takes public comment on all items on the regular agenda. Public input on a regular agenda item will be taken at its appropriate discussion. Public input on items not on the agenda or consent agenda may be identified and requested for consideration by the advisory committee at this time. The advisory committee may request an item to be placed on the future agenda or for a consent agenda item to be moved to the regular agenda for public comment. Do we have any public comment at this time? Okay. Moving on then to item 2, our consent agenda, the consideration of approving the September 15th regular meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any questions or changes? Okay, may I have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
I make a motion to accept.
May I have? Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as presented. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, motion carries. Item number 3, regular agenda public hearing and comment. The discussion and possible action related to a request for proposal to contract with local nonprofits to manage the shelter animal adoptions. For the record, I'm going to be recusing myself from this discussion because I am the executive director of Concho Valley Paws. So we'll turn over the meeting to Sarah, and she'll get us through this agenda item.
I take it you want to make a presentation, Mr. Flores.
Bear with me because all the weight's on this side, so if I start leaning this way, this is weird looking at something and everybody's over here. So if I start leaning, it doesn't mean anything. I'm a little off balance here. James Flores, Assistant Director of Neighborhood and Family Services. The item up for discussion and possible action is just that. What we did a couple of months back is we decided to look into possibly alleviating some of the duties and the burdens to a very limited staff. And one of the options that came up was to kind of dissolve us being in the adoption business. If anybody knows anything about a shelter, there's about 5 entities that run within that building. And there is 5 true blue entities that go on in there. And so we looked at it from a standpoint, I don't think I'm going to get additional staff. I don't think anyone is at this current, economic climate within the city that we're facing today. So we wanted to look at options that we weren't necessarily a failure at. We were actually pretty good at it, but we thought there was some better opportunity within the community to help with that aspect. So one of the things that we decided to do was look at the adoptions. I've got key people that are very strong in other capacities that get utilized in the adoption procedure that I could immediately move and do some other things with that I wanted to do. That was a hindrance when we were in the adoption process. We're not real good at fundraising. We never have been. I think there's always been some type of stigma with donating to a municipal shelter for some reason, maybe historical past or some issues. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we put out a proposal for various 501c3 entities to hopefully participate in or want to do our adoptions for us. I don't know the exact number of, I believe it was 5, maybe 6 501c3s that we sought for some type of feedback from, and we got that one from Concho Valley Paws. They were the only people that responded to doing that, and they offered to come in, take over our adoptions. I would free up about 2 people. There's more behind the scenes that lead up to adoptions, but as far as physically adopting an animal, it's about 2 people. And I guess we can talk the dollar amount and everything. Okay. So they basically come in and they would handle the adoption process for the city of San Angelo. They added some bonuses in there with possibly counseling surrenders. I think it's very important that staff be available to talk to somebody before surrendering their animal, because a lot of times we could find some type of resource that may be the reason they're surrendering, i.e. low income, can't afford to feed it. We have tons of donated food that's perfectly good. It's still within date. I don't feed donated food at our shelter. We feed a planned regimen through Palmer's Feed Supply. But I do take donations, and we do give that out to the community that needs it. So there's a lot of issues that could prevent that person from being separated from their animal. They in their proposal, there's a discussion about the importance of that and the having of a employee from that organization, make sure that they talk to people on the surrendering part of it. They've accommodated the same hours. We're looking at the same hours. As you well know, we've gone shut down for Saturday and Sunday, but we are open longer during the week. So we're open from 8 to 6. Technically, the doors open at 10, but the phones are received from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And they offer 2 staffers to be there at all times to do the adoptions up to entering the information that's related with, which is a big admin portion of that person's duty. There's a lot of paperwork that's required to finalize an adoption, from long numbers that relate to a chip to correct addresses, correct phone numbers, uploading that information to the chip to make sure that it, if it gets out in a month, we can contact the owner. Anyway, that's about the gist of it. I can answer any questions. I don't have an actual presentation of it. The bid come in at $60,000.
60.
That's what I said, $60,000 to provide that to the shelter. And we are going to use, as you well know, Bob and I, one of our, probably not good at a whole lot of things, but we're pretty good at the budget. And I'm confident that within our budget, we're not asking the city to give us any more money through some cuts in certain things that we can do, whether it be salaries, whether it be electricity, trash. There's a ton of areas that we feel confident that we can get that $60,000 from to release us from adopting animals out at the shelter and focusing more on animal services. Yes, ma'am.
With all of this discussion that you've already done, shouldn't that been including the board? It sounds like you've done a lot of looking into this and we weren't included. Should we have been?
Ma'am, you're being included now. This is how it works. We come up with an idea, we present it to you, and then you decide whether or not you want to support it or not. I'm not sure what you're getting at, whether or not, you have to follow the same rules as council, and so there's a open meeting rules we have to follow, and we have to be careful about providing information before you have a chance to vote on this. So there are some stipulations. I'm not sure exactly what you would want us to do. We can, you know what I'm saying? I'm not quite sure what you're asking us to do. We are presenting it to you. That's what we're here for. Could you put your mic, please?
About it.
Your mic?
Oh, sorry. Okay, this is a big decision, and I just feel that we should have been addressed and make these decisions with you.
But that's what we're doing now. This is what we do.
Yeah.
So I'm sure I'm trying to figure out what else we could have done.
Okay, can I help you out a minute? I've got one. The thing is, it's just kind of like when everything came up for the spay-neuter law, you just give it to us. I mean, our purpose is to advise y'all is what to do. You come in and tell us what you want to do. And it's frustrating. It really is. It's like you want to present us with this right now and then not even have time to think of questions that we want to ask ahead of time and as to what all's going to go on, what it's going to affect, and then make a decision whether it should go to council or not. Do you see what we're saying? It's very last minute. Y'all have been looking into it for 4 to 6 weeks, right? Is that what you said? We just found out about it today. But that's just the way things have been going the last few months, so.
That's how we do with council. We provide the
That's
the
not how
memo.
it used
We
to
go to
be.
council, we present.
Yeah.
And then they make decisions. We're doing
Somebody
the
would
same-
tell
follow the
us
same
what's going
process.
on and what might be coming up, so that we, without I just don't, I think we should have been informed earlier what was in the plan. When you sent the proposals out, somebody should have let us know that proposals were sent out. We didn't know anything about it.
Here's the thing, all we're doing, we're going to go to council, ask for negotiation approval. We're not, at that point, the negotiation part, you'll be involved with that as well. We're asking for you to get buy-in on the concept of whether or not we want to adopt out or not. We follow the same rules I do with council. I mean,
Can we ask
I'm
you
not sure.
today all the questions that we have about it? I don't think we have time.
You
Well,
can,
I
you
think
can
what we
always.
could do today, and this was my intent, and I think Bob's as well. I mean, the only intent was to present an idea to you. We, due to all the requirements of the purchasing laws and contracts and everything else, that's a very tedious process that we don't bore boards with. We know what we got to do to go forward to get that done, and so I think all this is a presentation so that we can get any question you have answered and clarified. But even once we
What does
get
it mean then where it says possible action related to?
if you asked me in a perfect world, if you asked me every question and we answered every question to your liking and you bought into it, the possible action would be to accept it or to deny it as a board. Because that's all we're doing. We're bringing it forth to you to tell us, do you want to accept this or do you want to deny this? If you deny it, then we deny it, possibly, but I would hope that through my presentation and listening to what I have to hopefully answer your questions with, we would have some type of buy-in to at least look at it, entertain it, because again, it's not affecting anything from a budgetary standpoint of the total operations of the shelter. And I understand your concern, so I'm here. I mean, I know you say we don't have a lot of time, but I will answer every question. Tomorrow on
Some people
emails,
that can
I'll
just
answer your
stay
questions.
here for, a little
Sure,
there
no,
on their
absolutely.
lunch hour,
So I gladly entertain any questions regarding this, because it has been something, as the guy that runs the shelter, there is 5 entities that go on in there, and I've got to look at every one of them. One of them I'm hurting in today, as David Howard could probably attest to, is animal control. I'm
How many
hurting.
ACI officers do we have?
I'm sorry?
How many officers?
We have 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to have 4?
Well, in a perfect world, we should have 7 to 8,
Okay.
according to population.
Why do we not have them?
Well, this goes back to, a long time ago, and we're probably deviating from the agenda here, but the reason being is that the real quick answer is 3 people were eaten up with spay-neuter, and I wasn't given 3 people to add to that number. So we had to find and adjust, and that's all we're doing in here is trying to run an animal shelter from an animal services standpoint, which includes the sole mission of protecting the public from rabies. So getting out of adoptions, getting out of a lot of things that we've been doing goes in harmony with most municipalities that deal with animal service control, animal control issues.
Okay, we're going to pay PAWS $60,000 to run it. Who gets all the money from the adoptions?
Well, that money is part of that payment. The money that's received on that would be no different than.
Okay, I mean, like we have $10 adoptions sometime, and I think PAWS does too. But then sometimes PAWS, I'm not real sure what their fees are, but the fee for adoption, I mean, is that going to PAWS or is it going to the shelter? Is that you say that's part of their $60,000. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not against it, and I know the shelter needs help. But I just want to know who's going to get paid for what and what's going to happen.
All they're going
to
to get paid is $60,000.
some of the employees that are at the shelter. Are they going to lose their jobs?
No, I don't have enough employees.
Okay.
That's the key for trying to redesign what I'm working with. In a perfect world, I need 5 more full-time employees. I'm not going to get those.
What about the veterinarian and his assistant? the tech?
What about them?
Are they gonna still be there? Are
No.
they gonna go to another job someplace?
Yes.
Okay.
My vet is.
What about his tech?
With the redesigning, I repurpose her in a big need.
Okay,
The tech's not leaving. No one's losing their job. The veterinarian has resigned.
okay.
So
The funds collected through the adoptions will come to the city. The Paws will get 60,000 to manage that process. They will provide, those funds will come back to us, and we'll
I
treat
have
them
a
like anything
question.
else.
How many, did anybody, you said only one person responded to requests to provide the adoption services for PAWS. Can you tell us a little bit about the criteria that were put into the bid process or whatever you want to call it?
absolutely. What we did is we designed, I took what we do today and put it on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of white paper, literally. This is what Carlos Carril does, my current adoption coordinator. We asked for his job, duty, and roles, answering phone calls, marketing animals as soon as they come in, adopting animals, hosting community events. We've gotten real big into that here recently with the help of the trailer. On down to some of the other stuff that he does deal with, the PR work of the shelter. He's also our volunteer coordinator / adoption coordinator. He's pretty busy. This guy's, but if you knew him, he's 3 people. He's a heck of an employee. So he's balanced this dual-hatted, triple-hatted role for a long time as one person. Most of y'all have been to the events, and you see him always there, rain, sleet, or snow. You know, he takes care of that. The other criteria that we asked for was didn't care if you were technically a 501c3 or not. We looked at the rescues that we do business with today. It's almost 47 people that we do business with. And of those, we went with the ones that we do the heaviest business with as far as the email and mailing of the potential bid that we were asking for. We didn't specify a dollar amount. We asked, what can you provide all these services for? How many people? We do have some requirements and some conditions that they needed to have met. And 6 people, I believe, Yellow Rose out of Big Spring, Paws. There is only one local rescue that the shelter deals with. One we don't deal with, and the other is not a 501c3. So Paws is the only local 501c3 organization that we have a contractual agreement with, even today. Not anything to do with his adoption. It's just from a rescue standpoint. So the other 3 or 4 were from out of town, and they just, they couldn't, they didn't bid on it. But at the end of the day, we're looking to replace Carlos with, and everything he does, so that I can utilize him. Carlos is an ex-registered certified code officer that worked for me for 8 years in code. He will be a big role in the animal control business. Which is what we are suffering and hemorrhaging at from an operational standpoint. And we have been since I've been there. This is nothing new. With all the adjustments and all the stuff that we had to do, I never got to replace bodies that it took to do some other new entity. So
Is Paws gonna do the trailer?
that will be available to them, absolutely.
Carlos won't do it anymore?
No.
Okay.
No, Carlos, he will. I mean, don't get me wrong. Carlos is very, very good at what he does. But from an operational standpoint, me, the guy that runs that place, I can use him in a whole better position for the betterment of the community than what he's doing today, because we felt like if we could get some pros that do this on a daily basis, the transition would be smooth. Everything would work. I could get this guy to really just get out there and start doing some ACO work. And historically speaking, we haven't been proactive in animal control enforcement. We want to start that. I think it complements the current ordinances that are in place. I think it needs to be done, and that's my goal, is to get out of some of these entities and into the one that we should have been doing a long time ago.
The length of the contract, is it a year-to-year contract or what?
I believe, I wished I had it, but I want to say there's a 30-day out from the city
Yeah, well, we haven't
standpoint.
negotiated it. Understand that. There is no negotiated contract.
Right.
Okay.
Please understand that. We got a request for proposals. We sent it out there. Give us your ideas. They came back. We're bringing them to you. If you think it's a good idea to proceed. That's what it is. Then we'll get negotiated, and they will negotiate the contract if council approves it.
Right.
Okay? That's how it works.
You're doing is you're going to try to take Carlos and you're going to maneuver him over to ACO position. Is that what you're trying to do with him?
Well-
As far as,
I mean, yes, but it's a big operational, I don't think Carlos, just his current roles is what we're replacing with a formal contract.
okay,
But I don't want to sit here and say he's going to become an ACO and you guys go, well, now you got 3. He's a very integral aspect of that shelter, and I can utilize him in processing. I can utilize him in ACO. I can utilize him. He's certified in tons of categories. So the ultimate goal is, yes, to get this city to 6, 7 ACOs. That's what we need.
and by basically, outsourcing some of the current aspects, like you're saying, having an adoption coordinator that's not directly tied to one person, having a 501c or, either local or if an out-of-towner did want to apply, but apparently no one has wanted to, according to what we've been told, that would basically allow them, who have multiple people, to fulfill that role, relieve that one person to go to do another job in the shelter, which are obviously understaffed as is, and that basically let you get another person to do things that are more valuable for the function of the shelter. The biggest thing that I'm noticing is that a lot of people are focusing on that the process of doing it, of presenting it, they may feel apparently that they weren't well informed, but I think probably more appropriately is we are getting actually what y'all did a request for proposal, which is basically nothing more than putting out a piece of paper and say, please apply for this job. And one person applied. That's pretty much what happened. The next thing that I would say is probably having the veterinarian that's currently there who is resigning and going elsewhere apparently. That will also free up funds based on his currently on his salary, correct? By not having him there.
Well, it can, but again, it's on me to find this $60,000, and I don't want to say that I'm not hiring another vet.
Okay, I mean, I'm just
So I
currently
don't
just saying,
want
I
the
mean, that would
notion to
be
be
something
thought that
that's
his
something else.
salary is going to pay for this. It's going to help, but we will entertain hiring another vet. That was a great thing having him there, and sad to see him go, but nonetheless, it is what it is.
No, that's fair. I was just trying to kind of maybe see a flow of train of thought here, and that seemed like one way of looking
Sure,
at it. From
that'll be
that
some
point.
of the fundings, absolutely.
But I think the biggest thing going forward is that when the final request for approval is done, that we just kind of make sure that we inform the members of the board. Because of other reasons, I'll stay out of that conversation. But that's just one of the things I wanted to say is let's just make sure we send an email out so that everyone can be aware of the reasons why.
Well, depending on the outcome of this situation, then we would know what to do with going forward to council or not. If we go forward to council, all that's going to be is just the approval to negotiate. Then we would come back with a negotiated contract for your blessing and go that way. So I would envision another meeting or two on this
Sure,
before we go, before we just solidify something, because we want your input on whatever direction we go.
Sure. And another thing that I would like to ask is maybe just for us on the board, how long has this request for proposal been out?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have Candace. You want to come up to the microphone?
Blake from the purchasing division. I actually was the one who put out the request for proposal, and we did post it for 3 weeks because we figured with it being a little different, the organizations. Oh, sorry. We did post it for 3 weeks. We figured the organizations may not be as familiar with the type of forms and paperwork that we have. So, because we're only required for 2 weeks, we advertised twice in the paper and then had an additional week for them to respond. And we did end up mailing and email to 5 people.
So it seems like they're pretty well informed then.
Yes.
A couple of things that I have is, from our colleagues up here, it just seems like we're on the backside of this. It seems like if you guys would have come to us and said, this is what we're thinking of doing, then we could have known about it. It just kind of seems like a little blindside. That's my point. One thing is, what happens if they do not do a good job?
They're fired. I mean, we end the
So
contract.
accountability measures will be placed in there. There's just a lot of things. The request for proposal would have been nice probably for everyone to look at, to just kind of be aware of. I think that's what they're saying. I don't think anybody's against it personally. I mean, that I see. I know you guys need help. It just seems like that everybody else knew about the request for proposal before the board did. So that's kind of the reason why the question, so.
And again, I don't know how to explain that because this is how, it's supposed to be
Well,
been
in
done.
the past, we used to have talk about tabling it, talking the next meeting about what we wanted to do, what we were going to do. So as a whole, we all knew what was facing us.
You can
And I
certainly
think-
table this. You do not have to approve it. If you want more information, we can certainly give you more information. It's your call. It's still up to you. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable, you can certainly table it.
I had a question.
Yes, ma'am.
We're kind of all over the place right now. Back to the vet. He's resigned. Are you looking for another vet?
We're discussing that option right now.
That's an option. So the tech, until you get one, is she going to be part of the counter, answering the phones,
I'm sorry, we
doing
have to
things like
stick
that?
to the, I know you have a lot of questions,
I
and some of
can't
those you
hear
can
her.
ask. You can't, it's not on the agenda to discuss the position of the vet and what's happening with that. So if you can keep it in the context of the RFP, we can discuss it, but just general questions, you'll have to ask James after the meeting adjourns.
That's what I mean.
think
We're
our-
all over the place.
I think our problem is, we don't know what's in the RFP. That's what the problem is. That's why we're all over the place. Because people are kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what question to ask, because we don't know the guidelines of the RFP. So if we had the guidelines of the RFP, then it would be easier to answer and ask questions, so.
And after the meeting, I can send it to James so he can send it out to you guys, but we do also have it posted on our website still. We keep the old RFPs posted, so that way if you go and look under our bid information, you can see it all there, but I'll send it to him in an email as well.
There is a one-page scope of services in the RFP that kind of describes all the services we contracted for. If that might be helpful, we could probably get Sydney to make copies of that for everybody so you can look at that today. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we're asking for.
So I guess the main thing we're gonna do is look at the RFP over the next 4 weeks and just go from there and readdress it at the next meeting. Is that currently what we're wanting to do?
That's what I would recommend.
Okay, I guess I need to take over here since Jenny can't be part of this. I suggest that we table it till the next meeting, that we get a copy of the RFP to see what all you want them to do before we send it to council. So how many people would like to either approve it? Well, no, I can't do it that way. Do you want to approve sending this to the RFP to council now? Those for it say yay, and those opposed say nay.
May I make a suggestion first before we decide to table it and not, and simply because,
That wasn't to table it.
well, just hold on, just before we decide to approve or not, when is the veterinarian gonna be leaving? Because that might
That has
affect.
nothing to do with it. They've already said that.
No, it actually would, because it could affect the quality of care at that part, because they could be adopting them, so.
Yeah, we're prepared for that. And again, legal's advised we're straying from the agenda. I'll be more than happy to answer that question later, but the quality of care is not going to cease with when he leaves. He's not gone yet, but when he does, we are prepared to handle that flow.
Fair enough.
I move that we receive a copy of the RFP and table this to the next meeting.
All opposed? I mean, all for it?
Yeah.
All opposed? Okay, if you'll get us a copy of it, then we'll look at it and we'll discuss sending it to council at the next meeting.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next agenda item, discussion and possible action related to the monthly shelter numbers for September and October.
Good morning, Bob Salas here. These are the numbers for September, October. You can see that in September, we had 464 new entries. We had 105 adopted. We had 26 owner returned. We had 60% live release rate. No adoptable animals were euthanized again. And we had 260 euthanized. We had 198 left in the shelter, and 20 used our clinic, 20 individuals. In October was a little bit less entry. We had 411. We had more adoptions. We had 128. Owner return was 25. 57 release rate, live release rate. 251 euthanized, and 176 were left in the shelter, with 16 using our clinic. And these are the euthanasia numbers. You can see that for September and October, you can see the majority, again, were cats, followed by dogs. And you can see on the right side, you can see the reasons why: aggressive, bite, failure, and those kind of things. So be happy to entertain any questions from you.
So there were 103 sick in October.
Yes, 103.6. The September numbers, I forgot. I got them back, but I got them late. I didn't put them into the system here. We can get that number too.
So I mean, were these, did they come in, were these mainly cats that were sick on that, or?
They came in sick. Some got sick. It's just typically that's what happens there in the shelter.
Yeah, I understand. I just was noticing that seemed to be can't compare to September, so, and I don't have the.
It's basically the remainder of all the in other words, the total minus everything else on the left side would be the sick for September, which is very similar to October's numbers.
Okay, fair enough.
I
was just curious if it was mainly feral cats that were sick, or was that including dogs, or?
It's a little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
Yes,
okay.
It's
fair enough. I'm just curious. That's all.
Any other questions? Let me take
I
them.
have one. For the agendas each month, we do this every month, right? I mean, we come up with numbers and how many euthanasia and all that stuff. So if this is part of the agenda, do you not want to have that as part of the agenda every month, or is that where that eliminates some of our meetings?
It's up to you. If you all want, in other words, if you have nothing else on the agenda, and you want to have just the numbers as the agenda item, you want to meet just for these numbers, we can certainly do that every month. Or we could, if we don't have them, we can certainly send these out to y'all.
Because this time it seems like this was kind of it, except for the pause thing. It was just the numbers.
There's another item on the agenda.
There's another item.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, this is one of the things we do every month.
Correct.
Is give the numbers. Last month, we didn't have a meeting. That could have been it, but granted, it would be over before it started. But I'm just wondering what the steps are.
We could certainly do that. If you want to have nothing but the numbers without no other agenda item, it's up to the committee. We can certainly not hold one, or we can hold one based on these numbers.
I would think that it would be easy to just send the numbers out instead of gathering everybody just to talk about numbers and look at numbers. I said I would think it would be easiest for some people involved here to just receive the numbers and be able to review them, and if there's an issue, bring them up the next meeting if you have a question about the numbers or something, instead of gathering everybody just to look at some numbers.
But I think that constitutes a problem, does it not, to have a mass email go out?
No, it's not anything that you actually take action on. You just look at the numbers and he goes over them. So if it were something you'd actually have to make a decision about, then it might be a problem. This is just providing you information. We just would have to provide it to anybody in the public, and we can do that.
actually do now take motions to approve the numbers as presented before they're provided to the public. So that is actually an action item, or it became one
Yeah, then you
recently.
couldn't release them just to the board without, if that's the way you want to continue.
That's something that we
We
need to
would have to
discuss
meet
then.
if you wanted just nothing but but the numbers.
But I wouldn't say that it's necessary for you to take action on the numbers. I mean, they're not going to change based on any action that you do or don't take. So another option would be just not to have it as an action item, always just be an informational item at every meeting. And then if you don't need to meet about anything else, you can still get them every month.
What I think would be good is that we look at them prior, get an email prior to the agenda list being set up for the week. And if we see an issue, we'd address it. And if we do not see an issue, we don't. I think one way of being able to see if there's an issue is to keep a running average for the year, for the last 12 months.
You have that.
And that would probably be a neat way of kind of monitoring that. So I would like to say that's probably what I would agree with too, because if we're just going over numbers and there's no issue with the numbers, then I know that I almost didn't make it here today because of various things. So, I mean, it's not that this board isn't important. It's just that if that's the only thing we're doing that month, then I do have things that are important to do at my work, so.
I guess
We can
then
always
just-
entertain agenda items as well at the end of the meeting.
And we do.
We can always entertain as many agenda items as you guys would offer at the end of the meeting.
No, but I mean, when a meeting's been canceled, we'll just say something about the numbers will be presented next month. Make it a 2-month thing like this, but just know that that's one of the things on the agenda for the 2-month. I can understand people working and coming in here and then turning around and, it's over. I can understand that. I have free time. But I know other people don't, so I can understand that.
Well, that's what we have here. We have the 2 months. We have the September and October numbers as presented to us because there were no agenda items turned in from any board or any advisory committee member for last month. So that's why there was not a meeting. So these are the numbers that we have. Do we have any other questions on these numbers? If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Motion to move.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the numbers as presented. Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, moving on now to item 3C, presentation and discussion and possible action related to the shelter infrastructure.
I'm sorry, again, I don't have a presentation on this, but, or PowerPoint, I guess I got a presentation. This was brought up by one of the board members, I believe it was Dr. Schulte. Wanted to know where we were at with the infrastructure issues that we face at the shelter. So I will be more than happy to answer any questions you guys might have regarding that. Infrastructure, including plumbing, HVAC, electrical, stuff like that.
I guess my biggest concern is I know that we know that the plumbing is pretty well not functioning in some parts due to various reasons. What's kind of the time frame on getting some improvements at least, or at least getting that to where it's less of an issue? So.
I don't have a concrete answer for you as far as a time frame. I do know that we still face those issues today. We have staff doing some things above and beyond to ensure that we are containing diseases as best as we can, considering drains don't drain and don't flow right. We recently applied for a grant. We were pretty confident in that grant, and it did not come in. As you guys know, it's about a $135,000 fix. I have built a fundraising committee that consists of citizens, within our community. That is Camille Yale, Elizabeth Grindstaff, Kim Steely, and Osu Peasy. And our goal is to hopefully get that 135 as soon as we can in any form or fashion, through donations, through fundraising, through whatever. But I do have 4 ladies within the community that are helping me with trying to fundraise for that purpose. They've all witnessed it. They've all been in there. They've all seen it. We still are facing a plumbing problem at that location.
How many bids did you get for the plumbing?
Well, we got one, and it's a very detailed type of transaction. You could either go in there and bust all the concrete out, which is an astronomical amount, or you could come in and pave over and slant down into a trough system, which is what most shelters, or even maybe your facilities on a trough system should be. And there's not a lot of people that are willing to do that. I mean, even 3Ds was very hesitant on finalizing that bid.
And that plumber is a contracted plumber with the city.
Right.
Is there only the one contracted plumber with the city?
They are,
I believe there's 2 or 3, but
I don't know.
of the contracted we
I'm just
use.
wondering if it would be worthwhile to reach out to them to see if they have any ideas of those other plumbers that can work for the city, to see if there's another bid out there, or maybe they have another idea as to how we might be able to, even if you're able to get it functioning for a short period of time in the interim until you could look at other bigger options. But I know that it's an urgent need.
Well, it wasn't long ago that we spent almost $10,000 for an interim type of situation, but it was very fast. That interim didn't last long at all. Okay. So we're back to square one. And, there's also there's just a lot going on from a infrastructure standpoint, a building standpoint, possibilities, new structure, new building, blah, blah, blah. So it's just hard to say. I just know that today, daily, that's what we deal with.
Have you provided your fundraising committee with a list of the issues that you face with the infrastructure?
Absolutely. I mean, they've all
They have
toured
a
it. They've
detailed
been there.
list of
Yes.
everything. And do they have because I know we're saying 160,000, but does that outfit the metal structure?
Whoa, wait.
The amount that you're talking about raising. Did you say 160
Well, you're talking about for the building now.
for a building for a new metal structure?
Right. And I think, by the time it's done and said, it may be, $250,000. It's probably about $250,000 to get it done right. But what was your question on the building?
My question was, I just wondered how much information the fundraising committee had so they can kind of know where they're going with it, what all you require.
Well,
with
and
the
ironically, that's
infrastructure.
what they started out fundraising for, and then we ran into this nightmare plumbing. So the focus has, and that's the shelter. I mean, the focus changes daily out there.
know.
It's tough.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Is this facility not owned by the city?
Yes, it is.
So why isn't the city helping pay for using some of that money to help you guys? Why are you having to fundraise?
We have a limited budget. They have provided funds through a maintenance funds that we have available to us. It's just not enough. And with a strict budget that we have right now and higher priorities, that's the answer. It'd be great to have, all the money we need, but it's just other priorities that are taken.
And I think that's important for us as a committee to understand, is that word priorities. I mean, if we want to make this a higher priority, then we need to talk to our representatives on council, because it is a priority to me, and I would think anyone that's volunteering to serve on this committee feels that there is value in the upkeep and maintenance or the construction of whatever we need to do for our community and the community shelter. So I just think that's something that maybe we should be having discussions with our city council representatives about, is where this falls on the priority list for the city, and how do we improve where it's at on the priority list.
I mean, just this week, we had a washer go out and bought one and connected a new washer, and today the dryer's out. So, I mean, it's nonstop out there. It's tough.
Are there any other questions or comments on the infrastructure? Would you could we get an update on what's happening with the fundraising committee and how we can play a part in that, and any assistance we can do? And again, I want to urge everyone to contact their city council person. I mean, that's what we're here for, is to advise council on how we think things should be handled, especially in the animal services department. So I want to encourage everyone to do that.
And I would like to add, that ironically, you did bring up the building, and in a perfect world, if we built a building, that would instantaneously correct our problem, because what we were going to use the building for, we would just shift what we're going to use it for today if we had it built. And there's a lot of sense to being made with a $200,000 investment versus $135,000 on something that the guy was reluctant to give you a bid on. So we could refocus and repurpose the original intent of that building. So don't want to diminish the focus of the fundraising committee off the building, but this did throw us for a loop when this came up. So I think if we could get the building built, we could accomplish what we need to, and slowly, from a city standpoint, fix 1 to 2, 3 drains at a time, which has been proposed. The problem is I'm at max capacity today. We're hitting a saturated market, so there's a lot of animals in that place.
And just for clarification, how many rows do you have in the shelter?
175.
And all 175 of them are occupied
Absolutely.
at all times? And then how many rows are not working? Is the drainage not working in?
Well, the problem is if you got one that doesn't work on a row, it backs up all the rest of them, depending on where it's at in that line of flow. If it's your first one, you're safe. If it's the first 2, you're safe. You get down in the middle of these rows, it clogs up the rest of them because this one's not going through. So I think we were up to about 25 amongst those that are truly affecting the flow process. And I don't know the number that it ultimately affects, but I know that 25 are being manually pumped out on any given day. So in order for the rest to flow. Cleaning that place used to be a 2.5-hour affair. That's top to bottom, disinfecting it. It's getting into the 4 and 5 hours today to clean the back portion of that kennel.
And I know that I'm aware of the situation, maybe more so than other members, and I know Mo is as well. Can you, for the rest of the committee, can you kind of tell us what all of that entails, the fact that it's backed up? I mean, what are you having to do? And then maybe touch on the fact of what's happening with the insect and the pest issues because of the backed up.
Absolutely. It just compounds. Just having a drain that doesn't flow is one thing. The problem with the design, or the original design, is it was every kennel, every drain in there is attached to a P-trap. Very unusual. You would P-trap about 10, 12 foot down the road so that you have this continuous flow. Ours are P-trapped. Every single kennel has a P-trap connected to it. Historically, we had some free, well, it wasn't free, but we had some labor that would clean that. And as they would back up due to people bringing in chewies or bringing in leather discs or beds or blankets or whatever, and the dog chewing it up, it would inevitably clog the drain. So they would take the end of a mop or a shovel or something and force it down in there. Well, you're hitting PVC. After so many times of that P-trap is broke, okay? So you're just draining into basically dirt in most cases, i.e., it's not just a drain issue. When and after a rain, your tick infestation comes up through supposedly your drain. Well, it's not. It's coming up through where the brokenness of that drain connects to Mother Nature. And so you have ticks come up from everywhere. One of them is so bad, we had about a 3-foot snake come in the other day. I don't know what kind of snake it was. We took a picture of it because it was unbelievable that this is a concrete foundation and a snake found its way through a hole. But you have compounding effects with a broken drain. It's not just the water, the filth, the defecating of the animal, the urinating of the animal. It's not just that. It's all these other potential hazards that come with broken P-traps and drains. So the ones that are more broke, they're the ones that are completely, 12, 18 inches of water are sitting still inside this kennel. Inevitably, a staffer has to shop vac that out, take it to the nearest exit, dump that water, come back and disinfect and clean it, then put the animal back in. Hence the double time that it's taken to clean that place today. In a perfect world, you pick up the hardened feces, You spray, you scrub, it drains, it goes, you squeegee it, and 2 minutes later, 3 minutes later, you can put your animal back in there. Today, that's not. They're having to be tied to the gate of each prospective kennel that doesn't, individual kennel that doesn't drain. So it's a very, very tedious process. I'll just leave it at the word tedious. But that's what goes on a daily basis out there.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
Do you want to have public,
Oh, yes, there's a public comment. I'm sorry. Is there any public comment on the infrastructure? Please come up. Please state your name for the record.
I'm Linda Marcelli. I used to be a member of this board, and now I'm just a concerned citizen. I have some comments and questions on the nonprofits taking over the adoptions. And my first question is
I'm sorry,
directed to both
excuse
Bob
me.
and James and to Jenny.
Ma'am?
Linda, hold on just a second.
Excuse me, you can't speak on an issue that we're not talking about right now. I know
Well,
there's a
you
lot
know,
of rules.
They didn't ask for comments.
Right, they tabled the issue. It will come back up again at the next meeting, but this
I
is
have to
not the
wait.
appropriate, yeah, it's a violation of law to speak on that issue right now.
Wow,
I know,
okay.
I'm sorry.
See, you should ask for comments.
Sorry,
Do we have any other public comment as, on the topic of the infrastructure? Okay. I'd like to make a real quick comment before I call for adjournment. I think it would be very beneficial for us to have a training, if we can, on the Open Meetings Act and what all that entails and what we are and are not allowed to do before a meeting, during a meeting. I think it would be very beneficial. I've made myself aware of the Open Meetings Act. I'm a little bit familiar with it, but I'm sure there's things I need clarification on. And I think that would help all of us understand how the agenda works, how the presentations work, what can go out ahead of a meeting, what conversations can be had ahead of a meeting, the daisy chain, the email correspondence, all that kind of stuff. So if y'all could get together and put something together for us, to me, it doesn't matter if it happens during a regularly scheduled meeting or if we call a special workshop for it. But I do think it would be beneficial based on the conversations we had today.
We'll get with our city attorney.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if we have no other comment, then I will take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. Need a second?
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
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 It is 12:53 and we are adjourned.